Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. On the podcast today, we welcome Andy Maier, guitarist and vocalist for Solid State Records' newest band, Opponent. Opponent released Sentinel back on July 8th. If you're a fan of Gojira, Metallica, Mastadon, Megadeth, to name a few, you'll want to give this band a spin. Andy talks about how his dad's cancer diagnosis was the catalyst for starting the band, his friendship with Ryan Clark and Demon Hunter, and the concept and inspiration behind the lyrics of Sentinel. Over on Patreon yesterday, I released the latest episode of After Dark, where I talk about all the DC and Marvel Studios Comic-Con announcements, and I reviewed the newest record from Norma Jean, Death Rattle, Sing For Me. Patreon.com/AsTheStoryGrows. $1 a month gets you that podcast. We also have a Discord server, which I've talked about previously, but I want to pump again. Over there, you can come hang out and chat about music, movies, audiobooks, comics, the podcast. I will often talk about who I'm trying to book on the podcast over there. It's better than Facebook. It's better than MySpace. I'll put a link in the show notes, but you can also find a link at asthestorygrows.com. Enjoy today's chat with Andy Maier from Opponent.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, man. How's it going?
It's going great. My newborn is learning how to eat and live life right now in the room upstairs. So literally day 3 of Dad 1.0. So
oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why are you here?
Well, my wife's cool. And I didn't want to miss an opportunity to talk about the album. And we're actually doing quite well. So I'm happy to be here, and it's actually a nice little breath of fresh air for me. So
that's awesome. Not at all related. I got a puppy last week. Our family did, and I was like,
nice.
Oh yeah, this is kind of what like having a child was like. This is why we decided to have no more children after my son was born. After the second one, because we were just like, oh yeah, our children could like basically they can't take care of themselves, but they're functioning human beings.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the waking up in the middle of the night to take a person to the bathroom. What? Oh.
Oh gosh. Well, we did the reverse order. We started with the puppy, and yeah. I think that actually kind of warmed us up.
Yeah.
To newborn life. I mean, minus the no sleep aspect of it, but
yeah, which is always fun. Where are you currently located?
Seattle.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah, I grew up in Renton, not too far from here. So my parents still live there, which is great with a newborn because they can just buzz over and get some Grammy and Grandpa times in pretty easy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was growing up like for you?
Growing up for me actually was was amazing. Great family, musical sisters and mom and dad. And I was actually fortunate to be homeschooled and was involved in theater a lot. And so lots of singing on stages, and actually got to the point where it was like, you don't really have to do like school every day and day and out. If you can learn these things and pass these tests, and my mom was a teacher. Yeah. So it basically, my parents decided like, how do we let this kid do as much theater as possible? And so I got involved in lots of theater things. And so I think that's why I gravitate towards the stage as an adult, because I'm like, as a child, that's like my home base. So, so I got to do lots of theater, and then that kind of transformed into film. Seattle was like a film scene for a hot minute, not anymore. But I was doing auditions. I auditioned for Star Wars at one point. Definitely didn't make it. It was like 5,000 kids at that audition. But then so growing up was like theater, film, and then it wasn't really until later in life that I got kind of back into music, really. So.
Yeah. What was that thing that got you back into music?
Honestly, my dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was 28. And I think, I didn't expect for that. Obviously, that's a very hard thing to wrestle with as a family. But I think what that did was it brought the timeline and like mortality just to the forefront. So like I had my career, my job, like we bought a house, and life was good. And I just I had these dreams of like, maybe I'll get an Academy Award for a VFX, or maybe I'll go for something crazy that's like, in the film scene, or be a director. And then it was like, when my dad got cancer, I realized, oh my gosh, like I kind of had music as like a back burner thing of like, after I accomplish all of my goals where I can tell myself that I'm good enough, then when I really want to live life and like relax and live the good life, then I'll play music again. But then when he got cancer, it was just like, no, man, that's like right now,? And so I realized like, like I'm 28. I was supposed to wait. That's right now. I need to start a band now if I want to do this.
Yeah.
So that's when like me and a couple buddies like really just doubled down and started buying crazy amount, like it was, all the guitars and all the plugins and all that stuff. And, listening to Nail of the Mix like incessantly, and ignoring everyone's advice that I've come around to appreciate. And, all that stuff just happened like very quickly. So that's when it was like, I want a band, like I want to play shows. I want to, play tunes, like, let's go. My wife was always super supportive. She's like, yeah, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah. So. Yeah. When my dad passed away, it was like that reflection of all like the good times and the memories you have and the things. And it's like, well, that's more of what I want to focus my life on, and not all this extracurricular shit that like is just overwhelming. Right. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. It was kind of one of those moments where you just realize like, wow, life is short. And what do I really want to be doing? And I think that a lot, for me at least, I kind of stuffed that so far in the background that I don't think I would be here having this conversation or getting to do these things if my dad hadn't gotten cancer. So there's a real blessing and a disguise there, which have been some amazing conversations with him about that. So
that's awesome. It's awesome. When did you start playing instruments? When did you start playing guitar?
Yeah, I think I started learning guitar in middle school. My dad is a great guitar player. He's wrote tons of cool songs for our family and stuff. And so he showed me, how to play the basics. And then it was like in high school, I had this buddy, Jonathan, who showed me like all the bad stuff. Like he was listening to Metallica and Pantera and AC/DC, and I was like, what is that? And so, I got a little CD player and started listening to that. And then my guitar journey totally turned into, I want to learn how to play the solos on, all these Metallica songs and stuff. Yeah. So then I was like, just self-taught, like just, oh, that's what he's doing, and then I was just like, every day, all day was just, I didn't know that you could look up tabs. I didn't know what tabs were. I didn't know what any of that was. I was just going like, where is he? Oh, they're tuned to E flat. Okay, what the hell is going on? So that's like, it was all just kind of like a feeling my way through the darkness, which I wouldn't change that at all. That's what it's about. And honestly, my motivation for starting a band is to get people to do that. So when guitar players tell me like, oh, your songs aren't complicated enough, or oh, this is caveman crap here, I'm just like, I don't care. Like the holy grail to me is that some 16-year-old is in his bedroom trying to figure out how to play this song, and he can play this song. Right. And like I'm starting to see that happen with like friends' sons and stuff, and it was just like, whoa, this is great. Like this is why I'm here. So that to me was total self-taught journey. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, it's like those Metallica riffs, like you think about songs now where everything's tuned to like B flat or something crazy, and it's just like you're just like open palm muting, like as low in tuning as you could go. But like those Metallica riffs, like they're still complex to play. Like,
oh yeah, like the first time you play Enter Sandman, or like to me, it was a huge moment for me was in my friend Jonathan's garage, and we played Seek and Destroy. I was on drums, and he you know, dun 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 dun, and once we were playing Seek and Destroy, and like that, like I realized like, oh, we can do this. This is like, you know, it wasn't like watching Tony Hawk on the X Games. Like, I'm never gonna do a 900.
Yeah.
But like, here we are, these two guys in a garage, and like it feels like we just landed the 900 at the same time as buddies, you know, playing that riff. I got all the fills perfect, you know. It was like, you know, even at the end, you know, that outro at Seek and Destroy, once we did that, like we walked out of the garage, we're just like, no one can kill us, you know. So, yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned you did a lot of musical theater, and that was like what you did when you were not doing schoolwork. Were you also like trying to start bands, or was it just like playing with your buddies, doing covers and like learning Metallica songs by yourself?
Well, honestly, like the real deal is I honestly wanted to, but I didn't think I was cool enough. And I was going to youth groups and stuff, and there was like all the normal kids and then like emo bands happening, like some really, really good friends of mine. I'm still good friends with them. But in those environments, I felt such a harsh hierarchy that I was like, I don't qualify to be in that inner sanctum for some reason. I wasn't cool enough to be put there. And it seems like you have to be like cool enough to start a band. So I'm probably never going to do that. Yeah. But then my buddy Joel in high school was like, let's start a band, and he pulled the trigger on it first, and then I was like, okay, and then that's when I got like an interface, and then like I actually, like looking back on it, was pretty like advanced like recording stuff happening even in early high school. But I always thought about that as his band because you know, he was an idiot, like thinking that we were cool enough to do that, but we really weren't. I was just like the computer nerd behind the infrastructure of it, but that's like, yeah. So I always wanted to answer your question. I always wanted to, but I didn't think I was cool enough. And it wasn't literally until 28 years old that I was like, oh, you got to tell yourself that you're cool enough. Like, you can't wait for somebody to say you're cool enough to do this, you know? So you have to sort of like knight yourself and grab this and pick up the sword, like the courage sword, and like touch your own shoulders with it. And just like that, I didn't understand that until 28. So
yeah, it's such a relatable story. I was also homeschooled, and so it's like, your friend group is at youth group, and it was like nobody else is into hardcore metal, and it's like, okay. And then like someone walks in and they're like, that's a cool t-shirt, we're gonna be friends because I know that band. Mm-hmm. And it's like, can we piece enough people together to form a band? And usually no.
I did play drums with my cousin at a youth group show, and I was like, my musical identity was drummer for the longest time. Yeah. So I got a double kick pedal, and I had like the bag with like the iron cobras in it and stuff. But I played that show with, like, that was my first show experience, and I was like, but it was still like his band. He was that was his thing, and I was kind of like the drummer in it, which I just felt like a freaking rock star after that. But then I just, for some reason, like back burner, and I honestly think the only reason why I was on the back burner was just pure insecurity, straight up.
Yeah. We know the inspiration for starting this band, but how did it all come together?
Just blood, sweat, and tears, man. Like, I have GoPro footage of us just kind of like running out of material to play. It's a lot as an adult to, when people have jobs, to coordinate time to get together, have a space to get together. My wife was gracious enough to be like, yeah, just take over the basement, So like we literally had a jam room in the basement. But those jam sessions and starting the band, like, you get everybody's excited, chatting, cracking the beers, cracking the jokes, and then you actually start playing music, and then you just quickly run out of material. And I think that's where a lot of people get discouraged. And honestly, we just kind of just kept like white knuckling it through. And Jonathan, who was initially in the band with me, he went on to be solo now, but he and I we were on like Messenger for like a year and a half, like throwing riffs back and forth of, that riff's not really great. What is that? Keep that, So a lot of the songs in our early catalog is like half and half, like him and I trying to figure out how to white knuckle ourselves forward.
Yeah.
He was my initial jam buddy. He introduced me to Metallica and all that stuff, and we reconnected in, you know, later in life. So really starting the band was like Jonathan and I, like, just kind of like going like, just like, we tried to start a YouTube channel at one time. At one point, we have like 3 episodes of us just sitting in chairs, like talking about that process. And it just, it's fun. And like, I love that era, but it's also, it's just, you're just firing the afterburners and just like pouring fuel into there with money and just raw energy that you don't think that you had and stuff. But it's just, you have to just kind of wake up every day and just keep deciding to do it. Keep picking up the guitar and deciding, you know, I'm going to write a riff right now, you know, and then that's when the cool stuff happens, because you showed up. And that's the whole like ancient thing the Romans believed about, you know, creativity was an external being that blessed you with material. You know, now we think a genius is I'm a genius, but like the ancient idea of a genius is like you show up and then he might show up and give you a song or give you a creation, but first you have to show up. So honestly, it was like a year and a half of just like showing up, and then sometimes we get like the song Whale, or sometimes we get the song Infinity, or, you know, those singles that we dropped early on. It was like, but there's so much garbage in between those things. It's just awful, you know, that stuff's just like mostly just all really bad. And but we still like, yeah, we're doing it, you know. And then we learned like, oh, what, you mic a cab, like it's so funny. Like our story is like totally backwards. It's like adults learning how to be teenagers versus most bands that are professional, or like teenagers and then they learn how to be adults. Like we're backwards.
Where'd the name Opponent come from?
So, you know, the grueling process of finding a band name is like the worst. But my wife and I were on vacation in Thailand, which was amazing. And I was at that point doing a study of Gojira Magma. Like I visually mapped out the song structures of each one of those songs and color coded where repetitions were happening. Like I was trying to understand and crack the Da Vinci Code on like how they write songs, which there is no Da Vinci Code. It's you know, that's what I learned through that process. But in that headspace, and really starting to get focused and serious about this, I realized that like I'm my own worst enemy in this whole thing. Like I am sort of second guessing myself constantly, you know. There's no reason to not do this apart from me hesitating, you know. So I realized like, okay, I'm my own worst enemy. I want something that like encapsulates that, you know. And then I was like, adversary, opponent. It was like literally the second word. I was like, opponent. And I messaged Jonathan. I was like, what do you think about opponent? He's like, I don't hate it, but I also don't love it. And we kind of hung on to it. You know, it's like naming your child. You're like, yeah. And then it grew on, and then it just like kept growing on us. And we're like, yeah. And then we like spelled it out, and then we like took like, what happens if you like flip the P backwards, you know, and like get all arty with it and stuff. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, that's our logo. So like and then my friend Austin drew this design for us, and we hand like block printed these like early posters. It just looked it just like crusty as hell. But the idea of flipping the P, and then it was like life versus death, you know, insecurity versus courage. Like every song kind of needs to have like sparks happen. In order to have sparks, you got to have like iron versus iron. So like just the constant battle, you know. And so I just wanted a word that encapsulated like music for battle, but like who am I battling, you know? And then I was like trying to answer that. It was like, you know, Master Puppets, like the message of that song is like there's somebody else pulling the strings, twisting your mind, smashing your dreams, you know. blinded by me, you can't see a thing, like all that stuff is about like there's the man's holding me down. And I and as much as I love Metallica and as much as like I wouldn't be there without them, like I think that there's a real, we can go one of two ways with heavy music. We can either, become these harsh people and as a tribe, like kind of, it's because of you that we're like this kind of mentality, or we can turn inward and really work our own issues out. And so I liked the word opponent because it was like, it forces the question, well, who's your opponent? And then you got to answer that question. And some people answer that, that's an external enemy. And I would say for most of us, for the vast majority of us, our primary opponent is ourselves, and we need to face that enemy, understand that enemy, and overcome that enemy. So this is just music. This is just the soundtrack for that.
Yeah. Did COVID lockdowns and kind of everything shutting down and staying at home give you that space to really create and hone your craft? I listened to the record you guys released in 2020, and it's like the rough outline of what Opponent would become on Sentinel.
Yeah. COVID gave us kind of the space to figure out our process, like before COVID, it was kind of like, okay, I think we figured out like who we are, and we had some lineup changes and stuff pre-COVID. And like, we really, found our drummer, like we found our, like we kind of solidified as a band pre-COVID. And then when COVID hit, it was like, okay, put that to the test. Are you going to keep playing music? Are you going to keep at the grindstone? Are you going to it was a sort of ultimate test. And so we decided to build a studio, which I'm looking at it. It's in my backyard. Nice. And that was hilarious. Like we banged that together in 9 weeks.
Oh, wow.
But COVID gave us a chance, like while the world was figuring out what it wanted to do, it kind of gave us like an air bubble to figure out what we wanted to do. And so it gave us it honestly gave us a lot of space to figure out our process. And I think we've settled into that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. How'd you get connected with Ryan Clark?
So Ryan Clark and I actually go way back to, I'm a videographer by trade. Like that's my bread and butter. So I'm filming with cinema cameras, like for corporate stuff, for music videos. But I met Ryan Clark on a music video for Extremists a long time ago. And it's the music video where there's like, he's, shirtless. There's like the white cross on his face. And I was just a grip on that music video. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, every other video project to me has been like cool, but this is like cool. This connects with my like actual music taste and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just was this like untouchable figure for me early when I first met him. As time went on and I started doing more music video projects, our paths kind of just kept crossing, and then as I kind of grew into more of a DP, more of like director of photography, more of a, hey, I'm going to do more stuff in this world. Because we have a lot of mutual friends, we ended up doing a lot more stuff. And then I started directing some music videos for him. Those went really well. So when their record, dual record release, Peace and War, happened, he reached out to me to work on the 3D renderings for the covers for those two records, because I do 3D rendering as well. And so he and I worked on the cover for Peace and War, and we kind of been developing this like really awesome working relationship. So we do a lot of projects together anyways. And so when I just started making music, he was, honestly really sweet to me, because he, we went to a couple shows together in this early stage of me trying to get my sea legs for playing live. And, and I went to some shows with him locally, just in Seattle. And I was like, yeah, I'm just screaming, I'm still at the stage where I don't like my voice yet, and I'm just like, yeah, when you're talking to each other at a show, and he's like, no one likes their voice. You just got to do it, man. Like he was just like, so Ryan and I, as I was kind of developing that, and we were still like working on other projects, like packaging projects, graphic design projects, video projects. I went on their last tour at Louder Than Life in Kentucky as the videographer. So like I was living in their tour bus for like a week, and you know, me and Yogi going on walks like before they played in front of 40,000 people, just like watching like Yogi just like taking that moment in, and then Jeremiah finally deciding that I was cool enough that, you know, we could hang out, and it's just fun. Like and Jonathan and I work together pretty much every day at our agency. So the bass player for Demon Hunter. So I mean, we just have a lot of overlap in worlds, and so when it came time to hit the vocal booth, you know, this mic was his, you know, suggestions, and you know, the fact there's a pop filter here, like all the stuff I learned from Ryan just watching him. And so yeah, he's been an amazing kind of teacher and just kind of showing me the ropes this whole time. So I'm super fortunate.
Did he get you guys connected with Solid State?
Solid State reached out to us while we were building the studio. It was really funny because it was like during COVID, we were banging the studio. I remember shoving insulation into the walls of our studio and being like, man, what the heck am I even doing? But this is also awesome. I'm not going to not do this. It's just awesome. It's awesome on its own. Like, here we are, like building, you know, like me and other band guys are in there just like building. And then my phone rings and it's Solid State, and just like, it's such a hilarious cliche, like movie moment where you're like, so there we are as a band building our studio, and then the record label calls us, hey, do you want a record deal? It's like, that's literally what happened.
That's so awesome. So
I don't honestly know why they decided to call us. It's just, I think that there's a lot of mutual relationships and overlap there, and a lot of, you know, they know who I am because of some of the video work that I've done that's released through Solid State. So there's a lot of overlap there, and I, you know, because they know who I am, I think they thought, oh well, he's pretty serious about anything that he does, so if he's going to do this, then we should get in front of this probably. And so that honestly, I know you didn't ask what my advice is, but if you have a reputation that is, you know, you're going to execute something front to back, think through it completely, and build something on your own. Like if you can Wright brothers a plane together, and you can have consistent flights and takeoffs and landings without planes crashing, you know, some airline is going to call you and be like, hey, do you want to build planes for us? You know, so you got to go first, and you got to put in all the skin in the game, and it's got to be all your skin, you know. But at some point, if what you're doing is working, you're not going to not be seen, you know. That's a lie. That's a total lie. You know, there's people out there looking for you. If you do something that crazy, here we are in the background, like backyard, like, I don't even know if we got the right permits to build that thing, but I was like, you know what, COVID's happening. I looked up enough rules that I think I'm probably not going to get in trouble. I talked to all of my neighbors. We're building this studio. You know, like you got to make the jumps, and then it doesn't surprise me that my phone was ringing because we were busting our ass, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I think it was the Norma Jean single, the first one from their new record. I watched that, and then your video was recommended. It had like premiered the day before, and I was like, "Oh, Solid State has another band. I'll check it out." And I was like, "Well, this is different for Solid State because like there's so much like hardcore and metalcore." And I was like, outside of Living Sacrifice, I forgot about Demon Hunter. I was like, "Do they have like a pure like metal band on the label. I was like, I like this. This is awesome.
Nice.
And then I got
Thank you.
the record from Shane at Adam Splitter, and I was like, yeah, this is like. I was trying to be like, who does this remind me of? And you said Gojira, and I was like, yes, it sounds like Gojira. Like, especially like Shadows has like Gojira vibes, and so yeah, I was like, it's kind of weird because I don't think of like they're a heavy label, but not like a metal label traditionally. But like, I mean, I love the record. I'm glad it's here. So
yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's just something we decided very early on. Like, we're not gonna like try to fit on a certain label or whatever. It's just like I listen to a lot of Gojira. So you know, I've seen the comments of people like, this is a Gojira ripoff, and honestly, that people that just think like that aren't actually doing anything with their life. They don't know. They're not making something. They don't understand that, you know, when you're inspired by someone, you tend to mirror what's happening, and I take it as a compliment when somebody's like, this is a ripoff. You're like, well, no, it's not, because they don't play those modes and those scales. It's a different tuning.
It's an inspiration.
Yeah, it's like looking at the statue of David and just being like, you know, this is a ripoff of Easter Island. It's like, no, Easter Island came way before the statue of David. They're both carved out of stone. Yes, you can look at all the similarities and say like, oh, he was ripping this off, but it's like, no. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Sorry, I'm fresh mad from reading some of these comments. Like, it's like that. it's all good comments, but there's always like there's a couple stinkers that just love to.
Everybody says it's great. Then that one person who's like, fuck this, and you're just like, oh man, that guy that's under my skin, and that's the only thing that matters.
Well, he's battling one
negative,
you know,
comment.
Whoever that is battling their own demons. You know, you gotta realize that person is in the process of dealing with themselves, and you know, they're their own worst enemy. If that's really what you want to do, is go make negativity, then that's your decision.
Into this darkness, I sink deeper. The day of my destruction only gets clearer. I am denied. I ran into the night. I gave up on faith. You warrior blind. I came up on shadows, aimed at me like daggers. I am undone. I am forgotten.
Where'd the name Sentinel for the record come from?
I came up with the name Sentinel while building the studio. And as I was processing, okay, Solid State just called me. Why am I building this studio? Like, I'm doing this just because it's this like cathartic, like, I can't not do this, so I'm just gonna do this, you know? Like, it's like I felt like I had a bulldozer, I'm gonna dig a hole, you know? So I was like, well, this is actually really interesting. As I'm building a box around myself, I'm putting up a literal frame, a literal container around myself that is a studio, 15 foot by 20 foot box. And I was like, this is kind of like a metaphor for how we construct our own realities as humans. You know, we set our own limitations. We live within those limitations. And that's sad, you know? And so like because I wanted the studio to be bigger. I wanted this huge sound, you know, but like the reality is I have cost limits, I have space limits. I have to set a domain on this thing. And I think in life you do that. You go, well, I wanted all these things, but at the end of the day, I'm going to set these limits on myself. But we grow as humans. And if you don't acknowledge the limits that you set on yourself earlier on and don't challenge those limitations, you continue to live in those limitations. So I was like, that's really cool. And then I looked at the door that I just made this hole for a door that's supposed to go there, and I didn't know how to build a door yet. I was like, okay. But I was like looking at this doorway, and I was like, it's kind of badass to think about like being in the box of your own reality, and there's only one exit, and there's like a guardian to that exit, and that person is yourself. And I was just like, whoa. It was like such a calm, like peaceful moment that I was like so clearly like, dude, it's like I'm in my own grave that I've like, and then like the exit to that is just myself. It's not another person. So then I was like, whoa, that just happened. That whole thought process feels clean enough to me to think about that should be a premise for an album. Like understanding that you have an enemy, figuring out that it's yourself. How do I get out of this box, you know? And at the same time, we were going through a lot of DEI, diversity and inclusion training at work, and there's a lot of verbiage around, you know, you're in a box, you didn't know you were in a box, here's how to get out of that box. Super helpful stuff about all kinds of things. You know, I know there's heated opinions on both sides, but I'm a transformed human because of those discussions. And I think that coming out of those discussions and then building a literal box around myself, I was like, how do you get out of this box? Well, you have to face that person. And so, but that person is standing there with like a sword in the ground, like you shall not pass, like, you know, like Gandalf, but like bad, like a ring wraith, like standing at the door, like, nope. You know, because that's facing your fears and stuff. Yep. So I was like, this is just getting more and more metal the more I think about it. And so I just started looking. I literally just pulled out my phone and I was like, Guardian Thesaurus, you know, and it was like Temple Guard, you know. I was like, okay, getting closer, you know. My body's a temple, like all that sort of verbiage is like, okay, we're getting closer. And then I was like, oh, the guardians of like the unknown soldiers like are called sentinels. Like that's like an actual job role in, you know, United States job roles, like literally like guarding that tomb. But it's like if we live in this reality that we've kind of dug our own grave. So I was like, I need a name for the guardian of your own grave. And I was like, well, the closest one that exists is Sentinel. It sounds pretty metal. Let's do it. So we locked that in, talked to the band about it, and all the guys were like, you know, gave me the thumbs up. It's like, great. So now we have something to say with the record. And then it was like, well, if I just signed on to delivering an actual record and now I'm like in the pro leagues, I have to deliver, you know. Yeah. And so in order to deliver, I know that I need to engineer a framework that can hold a lot of content. So I was like, well, let's start with being trapped in a box, being oppressed, you know, thinking that there's an enemy. That's 3 tracks right there. And then, you know, oh no, I don't want to go look at that guy. Oh crap, it's me. Oh, I want to retreat. Okay, you retreat. You realize there's no way out except to face this enemy, face the enemy. And then once I got into the writing process, I was like, wow, when you face that enemy and it's yourself, it's almost like, you know, moments where my dad has parented me expertly, going, now that you understand that, you can have that.
Yeah.
And going like, whoa, I don't think there is a final battle. I don't think there's, you know, lightsabers and, you know, blood and guts and glory. I think once you realize that you are holding yourself back and you realize what those limitations are and you face yourself and really do that, I think you allow yourself to pass peacefully. And so there's this really intimidating enemy that's only intimidating because you haven't gotten close to him, you know? And so I think it's like, well, I literally just bullet pointed that out and it was like, well, there's all my tracks, you know? And so then it was like, can I talk about each one of these points and like flesh those out? You know, and then that just kind of gave me all the space I needed to like process all of those things. And so that's what I mean. We found our process. Like once we find what we're trying to say with the record, then we can build it out, like putting meat on the bone, you know. And then once you've got that thing, it's like walking around and it's taking swings at you, you know, for how you need to be challenged. So and a lot of that traces back to this book for screenwriting called The Invisible Ink, which is written by Brian McDonald, and that's what caused me to really go, okay, I need to be going somewhere. I'm a storyteller at heart that expresses that in the form of music. So that's how I write. And then once we sort of commit to that message, we're like, yeah, we would give a year or two of our lives to that message. It's worth it. Then we start something.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune. And now I'm learning as I live.